All right. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Maritza Williams. I'm Director of Intake and Brief Services with Disability Rights New Jersey. And I'd just like to welcome everyone to this second day of our virtual assistive technology and community living summit. Um, First thing I'd like to state is that we encourage you to rename your Zoom profile. This provides to include your organization so that everyone who is attending gets a sense of who is participating in this session. Please keep your microphones on mute and your videos off so that we can guard against any background noises and distractions. And if you have any questions or any concerns, comments, you may place them in the chat. I will monitor that as we go along. So if there are questions, I can alert Dr. Jones. There will be time for question and answers towards the end of the presentation. And at that time, you may unmute yourself to ask a question, or again, still place them in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. There will be a recording of the presentation posted after this is done. It will be where you signed in for the Zoom. That link would then be the link of the recording of this session. And also there's a Google Doc there where everyone is encouraged, whatever documentation Dr. Jones places there, you can also add information so that there'll be a full access to comments and things that others want to share. If you wish to obtain a certificate of attendance, please make sure to go back to the link where you started for the Zoom, and at the end of that whole listing of the events, there's a survey that you must complete so that you can get the certificate of attendance. And, let's see. And that is the housekeeping for now. So with no further ado, Dr. Jones, I turn it back to you.
Welcome, everyone, especially during lunchtime. So taking time away from your time you would normally be eating lunch to attend this session, I really appreciate it. I am going to start the presentation, and as we'll go through, I'll be asking questions. So at any point, if you want to respond, either put it in the chat or unmute. And this session is on artificial intelligence and cognitive disability. So making the link between the two. And as we start, I'll say that this placement at lunch when we're departing is actually a good space for this presentation, because this presentation is forward thinking. So this is to plant a seed about artificial intelligence, its use for individuals with cognitive disabilities. And what I'm going to highlight in this presentation are things you make connections you may not have thought of, and also plant a seed for future conversations when it may come up, and things for you to think about and make connections to new ways of thinking about artificial intelligence as it relates to individuals with cognitive disabilities. Many of the things I suggest here, if you go into your local school system, they're going to say, what? I don't know anything about that. So this is not that kind of session. It is more a session about in the future, as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act becomes reauthorized, as there are discussions about changes to how individuals with disabilities are taught within secondary education. This information will be helpful, and it's also helpful as just so that you can be ambassadors about the future of individuals with cognitive disabilities and the potential that they have around us. Many people tend to think that individuals with cognitive disabilities, because their disability is hidden, there's nothing wrong with them. They don't need anything different. They look just like you and me, so why should I help them at all? They look fine. It's not like a physical disability. So I'd like to go over the agenda, which is a brief introduction of artificial intelligence, the potential connections between artificial intelligence and cognitive disability, some discussion questions and open dialogues, and then get your closing comments. So some important definitions. Cognitive disability. Now, I know most of you probably know this already, but it's always good to set a foundation. So cognitive disability is an obstacle that an individual has in learning, which might include one or multiple challenges like understanding, processing, recognizing, perceiving, remembering, and choosing content information. These difficulties can also include the lack of ability to focus for an extended amount of time on what is taught to them. Now, artificial intelligence is a branch of computer science that aims to imbue software with the ability to analyze its environment using either predetermined rules or search algorithms or pattern recognition learning models, and then make decisions based on those analyses, also known as machine intelligence. Now, that's a fancy way of saying computers that have the ability to think. So there are two different gold standards for that. There's the gold standard that you see in the movies, which is a robot walking around that just like a person. So that is called full-fledged AI, full AI. And then there is artificial intelligence, which is specific. It's specific to a type of area or a specific activity. That is currently what we have around us every day. So you'll recognize some of these things are your iPhone, Alexa, hopefully mine just let, Alexa stop. Mine just lit up. Any of those things that you use in your house. Other examples of artificial intelligence include the robots that will automatically vacuum your house, that are able to recognize objects. Some cars have the ability to recognize people. So all of those are different types of artificial intelligence that are used today, including much of the information on your phones, including the artificial intelligence used in iPhones to enhance the pictures on the phone. Google uses artificial intelligence to bring up the information in your searches. Those annoying ads that pop up from all the other information you search for once and it pops up 50 million times, even though you've only looked at it once. That's artificial intelligence in the background working based upon your search history. Now, three important definitions that is going to be really important as I walk through this information, and that is equality, equity, and fairness. And it's always good to make this distinction between the three. Sometimes they're used interchangeably and they're not really interchangeable. Equality is the state of being equal. Basically, everybody gets the exact same thing. Equity, everybody gets what they need based on their actual needs. And fairness is acting without bias to one particular side or another. So it's fair. Now, as human beings, there are studies that children, as soon as they begin talking, and really when we're born, we have an innate sense of fairness. So we kind of we're born with a sense of fairness. There are studies that highlight that toddlers can recognize what's fair and what's not fair. If you give them toys and you take them away and they have somebody beside them and they're doing the same thing, you take more than, they can recognize what's fair and not fair. Equality and equity, however, those we're not really born with. And depending on who's looking at the situation, it may be equal to them or it may not, and it may be equitable and it may not. That depends on the lens of how it's being approached. And one of the things that this presentation is to call into question some of the things we take for granted in terms of artificial intelligence and individuals with cognitive disabilities. Now, our goal for this session, understand the basics of artificial intelligence, understand how innovative use of AI can benefit individuals with cognitive disabilities, understand the critical role of equity, fairness, and equality play in discussions of AI, and understand the role of fear and perception and societal acceptance of AI in individuals with cognitive disabilities. And the last one is particularly important because most of the time when you say, when you hear the term artificial intelligence, you think of killer robots. You think of somebody that's, you think of something that is eventually going to take over the planet or destroy. It's never usually, there are more negative connotations of artificial intelligence than there are of positive ones, except for the few that you use daily. So our first discussion question is really talks about thinking about how you know information, and it really applies to individuals with cognitive disabilities and their learning in school. What does it mean to know something? What does it mean to learn? And does that ability always have to reside in the person? In other words, does the person's brain have to, is that the basis for that? So this first things to think about, an individual with a cognitive disability who has a reading difficulty uses speech to technology on the computer, tablet, or phone to have written material read to them and can use this technology during a learning assignment. Or a student with a cognitive disability is allowed to use their calculator to complete math problems for a work assignment or a learning assignment. Is technology used in these situations beneficial, harmful, and why? And how would you respond to these questions about in light of equality, equity, and fairness? In other words, if a student with a cognitive disability is in a classroom with regular students and they're taking a math test, is it fair for that student to be able to use a calculator to get the answers, to answer the test if they have a cognitive disability? Do you think this is fair? Do you think this is equitable? Do you think this represents equality? So that's really the first question for discussion. And I'd really like to get your input either in the chat or just by unmuting and giving me your comments. And I can ask something even simpler. Do you think this is fair? Which really gets at the heart of it. If you're in a classroom and you have a child who has cognitive disability and the other students do not, is it fair for them to use a calculator? And I see a comment. I see yes, I believe it's fair because it's providing a student with the tools that they need to be successful, and I have another yes. Thank you for those comments. Now, I will point out before I even move forward that, and I use the math calculator as a pointing example because at the beginning of when calculators were introduced into the classroom, many people thought that calculators were a deterrent to learning. So they didn't want to use them. It took a while for calculators to be introduced into US classrooms. And it's one of the reasons why their use in classrooms today is only limited in use, because they were never fully adopted and accepted by teachers because they thought using a calculator would deter learning, especially in early grades. Now, some things to consider about this question. A student on crutches using an elevator in a crowded school. Students without a walking impairment are not used to elevator. The school also has ramps that everyone can use. Use of the ramps for the person on crutches takes considerably more time. Is your response to this scenario the same as the previous scenarios? And here, what I'm really getting you to look at is the difference that people make between physical disabilities and cognitive disabilities. Many times, there is often a duality between looking at this between fairness and equality when there's a noticeable physical disability. You often take more liberties with that than you would with a cognitive disability. Now, also, one of the things I want to highlight as we go through are technologies that are available now that I think are highly useful for people with cognitive disabilities. One of them is alter ego. Now, with this there's a picture on the screen before you with the kind of headset kind of thing going down. What this device does, it allows the person to communicate with their computer or any other electronic device without talking. So it acts as their keyboard. So instead of typing, for example, for Google to look up a particular question or typing in a math problem, they can think, what is the answer to 2 + 2? Or I'd like to do a search on. And it allows them to do that without talking. This is available. It's been developed by MIT. So it's technology that is out now. And this is only one example of technology becoming better at augmenting cognitive needs and accessible and non-intrusive. Because a lot of times you think, well, if in the classroom, we allow individuals with cognitive disabilities to use computers, they're not going to be able to have their computer around with them all the time. Well, that's not exactly true because computers are getting smaller and smaller and non-intrusive, and this device can be worn all the time and always accessible. Any questions or comments so far from anyone?
Nothing in the chat. So.
Okay. The second question is, do you think the concerns against using the use of AI in educating students with cognitive disabilities outweigh the benefits? AI will result in physical underdevelopment or deterioration of individuals with cognitive disabilities. Now, this is one that is very prevalent, and if you ask anyone, they'll say, oh yeah, that sounds right. I mean, you have a person who has a cognitive disabilities and you're giving them aid, so they're not developing their own cognitive disabilities. So over time, I think they're probably going to decrease. Or AI will eliminate the need for teachers in the classroom or result in job loss. So this one really touches upon the idea that our use of artificial intelligence in the classroom, if we started at any point, will eventually end up with no teachers in the classroom. These are just things to think about. So the question is, do you think that these concerns against the use of AI in educating students with cognitive disabilities outweigh the benefits? And this is another point for folks to weigh in. There's no right or wrong. I'm just asking, and the questions in context are perceptions that are out there currently within the wider general population. Any thoughts about this question? And if seeing none, so just some things to consider. So for example, people wear glasses to augment their vision deficiencies, and this does not make their eyes weaker. No one ever thinks, you know, just because you have a device on your face you already have weak eyes. Putting on glasses doesn't make your eyes weaker. It enhances your current vision. It's the same thing with someone with a cognitive disability. Allowing them to use AI doesn't make their brain weaker. Your brain is your brain, and augmenting it to assist you is not going to make it weaker over time, no more than wearing eyeglasses is going to make your eyes weaker over time. If your eyes are getting weaker, it's because they're naturally getting weaker. The glasses didn't make your eyes weaker. And I see use of AI does impede development because it keeps you at a certain level depending on the age. Now, I guess that's an important perception out there, and I want to challenge that. So the question is this. What I suggest here with the use of AI is that people use AI in a different manner than what it's being used now. The current perception in the classroom is that AI is used to maximize the ability of the person's current potential. In other words, if you have a cognitive disability, you can use the AI benefit to enhance that ability. So if you're reading at third grade level, you can use it to help you at third grade level, but it's not meant to take you to 12th grade level or college level. It's made to do that. But what I'm suggesting is why? Why is that? Who says that that shouldn't be the case? Because what I'm suggesting is that artificial intelligence for someone with a cognitive disability, their use of it should be just like a wheelchair. You don't ask people with wheelchairs to get up out of their wheelchairs once they get their wheelchairs. The wheelchairs go with them everywhere. You don't request that they not use it when they go into buildings. We make accommodations within the building for them to get in. And so the questions that I'm posing here are kind of the same thing. It's my belief that with the increases in technology and a different stance within the educational environment, that individuals with cognitive disabilities should be able to learn and perform as well or exceed those with around them. So it's really a difference in how we're using technology in the classroom and the expectations around it, so that that person is competing with the use of technology and it's a part of them. So it's the same as a person with a wheelchair. Wheelchair goes with them everywhere. It's not just in the classroom. So to answer this, it keeps them at a certain level, and dependent on the age, yes, they are dependent on the age. They are completely dependent on the technology for their performance. But that's no different than a person in a wheelchair. They're dependent on the wheelchair, and you don't think, oh, they should get up out of the wheelchair. You know, you came into this building, we're walking around, or there's steps here, you need to use these steps. No, it's a part of them, and as a part of them, they should have access to it on a continuous 24-hour basis. It's just something to think about. And the reason why we make those distinctions, why are we making those distinctions for individuals with cognitive disabilities? Just because there's an artificial distinction there that should not be there, and it limits the ability and the ways that they are being taught. So what I'm suggesting is that if you have someone who, for example, has a cognitive disability that limits them to third or fourth grade performance level. Now, in terms of machine use, that's enough to access the machine. And so the instruction there is not about, the instruction there is how to access the technology to provide an answer when needed and in the right context. So it's a different type of instruction. In other words, how do you access this piece of technology to get the answer to this particular situation or problem in a timely manner? That's a different type of instruction than teaching you, okay, 2 + 2 = 4. This instruction is, if you have a math problem of this type, how would you go about accessing the answer to this with technology? So that is a different type of technology for an individual with a cognitive disability that allows them to go beyond their limitations, their physical limitations in terms of cognition. Now, AI is an umbrella term under which several different technologies reside: machine learning, computer vision, artificial general intelligence, deep learning, cognitive computing, robotics, knowledge reasoning. Now, artificial general intelligence generally refers to the holy grail of AI. That's the person walking, the robot walking around that acts just like a person and has all those features. That we have not achieved that yet, but everyone is working toward that. Natural language processing is what is used in all of our, like Cortana, Alexa, all those different things use natural language processing. Knowledge reasoning.
Something I found on the web.
Alexa, stop. I should have turned that off before I started. Robotics, deep learning are just other examples of how artificial intelligence is used in the technologies that we use every day. And I think this goes back to an earlier comment. Are you willing to reclassify what it means for individuals with cognitive disabilities to be educated, even if educated means that they can only find the information to answer some questions and solve problems properly with the assistance of artificial intelligence? And this really goes to the heart of it. And this is an important big question because in order for this to be a reality, it's not also about the person with the cognitive disability. It's also about everyone around them, about their perception of fairness, about the perception of, well, does this person really need this? An equitable question, why should they get to use it and I don't? Or is this about equality? I get to perform and earn a 6-figure salary, and this person, because of the cognitive disability, may not have access to that salary, but with the use of AI, they may, because they may be able to earn just as much as the other person. So usually this is a pretty fierce debate in terms of how you view individuals with cognitive disabilities, and people can be the ranges vary. And the question in context: it's graduation time and class ranking, including students with cognitive disabilities. Students with disabilities are no longer in the bottom of the GP rating. How do you feel about this? So you have, on the one hand, you have the parents with child with a cognitive disability. They've learned to master the use of artificial intelligence. They can use it in context. They can produce answers and quickly. They've mastered it. They can use it to function, and they can function on the same level as someone without a disability. And they're in your child's ranking, and your child doesn't have a cognitive disability. How do you feel about that? Do you think, no, that's not right, they shouldn't be in there, or they should be in a separate ranking? Is how do you actually feel about that? And I'm just curious about responses to that. If anyone has a response, let me know. these are just things to think about. You're in a job setting, your coworker has a cognitive disability, but they should be in a different ranking, AI assisted. Okay. You are in a job setting, your coworker has a cognitive disability, but through augmentation of AI throughout their education career, they qualify for the same position as you. How do you feel about that? And so you begin to see that as AI offers solutions, but those solutions are not just, they don't just impact the person with the cognitive disability, really get at the societal implications of what it means to have a disability and what it means for a person with a disability to achieve. Because generally in societal perceptions, individuals with disabilities are, just as the word kind of implies, they're at a disadvantage, and you don't expect them to excel or be competing with them. And so, this discussion is aimed to try to begin to think about, well, suppose they were competing with you. How do you feel about that? I mean, they're a person just like you are, and they're entitled to all the benefits of the technology that humans have developed. So if you're saying that they don't have access to the technology, but you, on the other hand, you don't have a cognitive disability, but you use technology all the time, but you use it for pleasure. So you use it for pleasure and entertainment, but a person who needs it, they can't use it. So it's just kind of to begin to think about the limitations we have on AI. And in the job setting, they can perform the job again, AI assisted. Yes, it would be AI assisted. All these would be AI assisted. So would that be a different pay scale? So really at the heart of this question is, this person is performing the same duties as you are, but they're using AI to perform the duties, and you're getting paid the same amount of money. Would you be okay with that? You don't have to answer that, because this is more like a or who did you vote for question. But just think about that. They're earning the same amount, and without the AI, they wouldn't have the job at all. So they wouldn't be where you are with that job. So how do you feel about that? Lastly, consider that 35 of the, I see in the chat, if in the job setting they can perform the job, again, AI assisted, all is fair in love and war. Consider 35% with cognitive disabilities live below the poverty line, which is fact. The mean earnings of individuals with cognitive disabilities was $23,000 in 2018, and it has not adjusted much in 2021. People with cognitive disabilities are at significantly increased risk of being homeless. So with these facts, what I'm suggesting is that there is a path to change these facts through the use of AI, but it's not an easy path, because it requires a complete readjustment and reconsideration of what we consider to be fair, equitable, and equal. And those discussions usually touch off very strong emotions in people when it concerns fairness. People usually have a very visceral reaction. Either that's not fair, I don't want to have anything to do with it, and you shouldn't be doing it, or it's, I think that's based on equality. I think that's possible. I would like to consider it. Or in terms of equity, they need it because they have a disability. It ranges the gamut. And in terms of, and you can think of this in terms of school funding, for example. Right now, individuals with disabilities have a significant amount of school, significant amount of the budget for education. And in many times that is challenged, or it's very hard for that to increase because it's already significant, even though there's a great need there. So this gets at the heart of what we consider to be important within society and the questions that go along with that. Other questions or
So
comments?
sorry. I don't know why it's not allowing me to see. I have the chat box, but none of the transcribed stuff is showing up. So
Okay. Oh, you're talking, you went on mute.
can you hear me?
Yes, I heard everything except the last sentence.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just saying I can see the chat box, but there's nowhere. It just says chat, minimize, and enlarge. And I'm not seeing the transcript. So if anyone is writing anything, I can't tell you. I don't know what
Okay.
it's.
I think we're okay for right now. The last comment that I have in the chat is all is fair in love and war. If anyone has actually put anything in the chat after that, kind of let me know, because I may not be seeing it either. Maybe just a chat malfunction. So if so, let me know. So if you did put anything in and I didn't respond, it wasn't on purpose. It just didn't come up in the chat. I don't want anyone thinking I was ignoring their
Comments.
yes.
Okay.
And
Let's see.
we're at the end of my presentation. I'll take a minute to see if there are any closing comments. And I'll also say, if people with cognitive disabilities can perform a job being AI assisted, then it is fair that they can better himself and find a job that will make him live better. Thank you for that comment. Now, I will say that I really appreciate everybody participating today. I'm the author of A New Way to Know, using artificial intelligence to augment learning in students with cognitive disabilities. So this
Sessions.
this book goes into depth in about many of the concepts we discussed in this session. For individuals in this session, if you'd like a free audiobook of this particular book that I have, if you email me, I can send you a link for a free audiobook. The book itself, the paperback version, is also available on Amazon under the title in my name, A New Way to Know, by Dr. Al Jones. So I welcome you if you want to delve more, or listen or read more about this in depth. Let me know. I'll be glad to provide you with a copy. Just send me your email and I can send you a link. Or if you prefer a hard copy, or you don't want to send me your email, I know, or share the information, the book is available on Amazon for purchase. But I have free copies of the audiobook that I can send to individuals who are in this session. So I really appreciate your time during lunch. I'm trying to give you back a couple of minutes. We have 45 minutes, so we're at 40. I'm giving you back 6 minutes. That's not enough to eat a sandwich, but it may be enough to have a couple of sips of whatever beverage you're drinking. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I thank you so much for your participation today. You're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to thank you, Dr. Jones. It's very enlightening. And I think in hearing everything that you were saying, I look at possibly AI just as an accommodation to enable persons with cognitive disabilities to do those things that others may be able to do without that accommodation. I guess in looking at it that way, I was thinking it's probably not necessarily an advantage, but it's what enables them to function at that level, to compete or to be at that, to do the job or to learn in the classroom as anyone else would. Just food for thought.
Thank you.
And I thank you again. Very good information. Thank you all for attending. As I said earlier, if you need a certificate of to show that you attended this session, please complete the survey. And all of the information that was presented will be at the location where you signed on to the session, where the Zoom link was, will now become the link for the recording to this session. Thank you all and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Goodbye.